It was January 11th, 2013, a typical Friday morning at Lowndes High School, but for Kendrick Johnson, the clock had already stopped. While students moved through the hallways and teachers began their lessons, Kendrick was missing. He hadn't come home the night before, and his mother was already frantic, pacing the school grounds with a flyer in her hand. But the answer to his whereabouts wasn't outside the school. It was in Gym Court B. A group of students was looking for a place to sit when they noticed something strange near the wall where the heavy wrestling mats were stored vertically. One student climbed onto a bleacher and looked down into the center of a rolled-up mat. He didn't see a prank or a student hiding. He saw the soles of a pair of socks. This is the detail that investigators couldn't ignore. Kendrick was stuck in a hole only 14 inches wide. He was inverted, his head nearly touching the floor, his feet pointing toward the ceiling. The heavy vinyl mat, weighing nearly 100 pounds, acted like a professional-grade trap. When the first responders finally tipped the mat over to reach him, the scene shifted from a rescue to a recovery. Kendrick's body was stiff, his face severely discolored from the blood that had pooled in his head for nearly 20 hours. But as the police began to process the area, the accidental narrative started to fracture. Kendrick's shoes were found tucked behind his knees, yet one was missing. When the mat was moved, that missing shoe fell out, resting on a pool of blood that looked out of place for a simple fall. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. The lead coroner on the scene would later express deep frustration, noting that the body had been moved and the scene disturbed before he was even allowed to perform his duties. In the crucial first hours of the investigation, the very environment that could have proven foul play was being compromised. As the school day continued, a chilling reality set in. Kendrick had been in that gym since the previous afternoon. He had been there while other students played basketball, while the janitors cleaned the floors, and while the gym lights were turned off for the night. No one heard a scream. No one saw a struggle. 17-year-old Kendrick Johnson had simply vanished into a 6-foot roll of carpet in the middle of a crowded school, leaving behind a silence that would eventually grow into a national outcry for the truth. In the eyes of the Lowndes County Sheriff's Office, Kendrick's death was a 1-in-a-million freak accident. Their investigation concluded that Kendrick used the gym mats as a makeshift locker to avoid paying for a traditional one. They theorized that he had dropped his sneaker into the center of the roll and, while leaning over to reach it, lost his balance and fell in headfirst. The physical space Kendrick occupied was a hole only 14 inches wide. Because the mat was 6 feet tall and made of heavy reinforced vinyl, the authorities argued that he became pinned in a vertical position. This led to a medical condition known as postural asphyxia. Essentially, being held upside down for hours caused his internal organs to shift, slowly putting pressure on his lungs until he could no longer draw breath. To the GBI, the lack of struggle marks on the outside of the mat suggested that no one else was involved. However, when the family analyzed the dimensions of the math didn't seem to add up. Kendrick was a broad-shouldered athlete, and the opening of the mat was narrower than his own frame. To slide into that hole without tipping the 100-pound cylinder over would have required a level of precision that felt impossible for an accidental fall. Furthermore, the position of his body raised immediate questions. His arms were tucked by his sides, a pose that contradicted the natural human instinct to reach out and break a fall or claw for a way out. Then there was the issue of the shoes. The sneakers found inside the mat didn't match the pair Kendrick was reportedly wearing, and one was found tucked behind his legs while the other was at the very bottom. If he was diving for a specific shoe, the placement of the evidence suggested a much more chaotic scene than a simple slip. While the police were quick to close the file on a tragic mishap, the physical reality of Gym Court B pointed toward a much more complicated and sinister sequence of events. The official ruling of accidental suffocation felt like a death sentence for the truth in the eyes of the Johnson family. Refusing to accept that Kendrick had simply slipped, they fought a grueling legal battle to have his body exhumed for a private, independent examination. They eventually secured the services of Dr. William Anderson, a veteran pathologist, hoping he could find the evidence the state had seemingly overlooked. But when the procedure began, the clinical environment of the morgue turned into the setting of a macabre discovery that would haunt the investigation for years. As Dr. Anderson began his examination, he realized the body had been fundamentally altered.
Reluctance of the medical examiner in Georgia to even look at our autopsy photos. At least look at them and say, no, I don't agree with it, but to not even look at them in the first place, it's difficult to comprehend why you would do that.
Yeah, that seems very cavalier to me. I can't imagine just assuming I was right about something and not willing to at least look. I might still be right, but at least look at it objectively.
Well, even if you're going to deny that what our findings mean anything, at least look at them before you deny it.
at least pretend.
It's good to cover yourself. Yeah, at least to look at it before you automatically deny it.
In a standard autopsy, the internal organs are examined and then returned to the body cavity in a plastic bag before burial. However, Kendrick's body was hollow. His brain, heart, lungs, and liver were entirely missing. In their place, the teenager's chest and abdominal cavities had been packed tightly with crumpled up pieces of old newspaper. It was a sight that defied every standard of forensic and funeral protocol. The funeral home tasked with Kendrick's initial preparation claimed the organs were too decomposed and had been discarded as medical waste before the body reached them. This explanation did little to calm the family's suspicions. The organs were the primary evidence needed to confirm or deny the theory of suffocation. By disposing of them, the state had effectively erased the biological record of Kendrick's final moments. To the Johnsons, this wasn't just a procedural error. It was a calculated move to ensure that no second opinion could ever be fully verified. Despite the missing evidence, Dr. Anderson focused his attention on the soft tissue of the neck and head that remained. His findings were a direct strike against the official narrative. He discovered a specific area of hemorrhaging on the right side of Kendrick's neck that pointed to a non-accidental injury. According to his report, the trauma was consistent with a heavy, blunt force blow, the kind of impact that could have caused immediate unconsciousness or even triggered a fatal cardiac event. Dr. Anderson's final report officially changed the cause of death from an accident to unexplained blunt force trauma. This revelation suggested a terrifying new timeline. Kendrick may have been attacked in that gym, struck in the neck, and then hidden inside the mat while he was already dead or dying. The discovery of the newspapers transformed the case from a local tragedy into a national scandal, painting a picture of a system that was not only failing to investigate, but was actively filling the gaps in the truth with trash. The shadow of the Bell brothers. As the community analyzed the inconsistencies in Kendrick's death, public suspicion shifted toward two fellow students at Lowndes High School, Brian and Brandon Bell. The brothers were well known on campus, not just as star athletes, but as the sons of a veteran FBI agent. Rumors began to circulate that Kendrick and the brothers had been involved in a long-standing feud, one that allegedly started after a physical altercation on a bus during a previous school year. The theory proposed by the Johnson family's legal team was as simple as it was devastating. They believed a fight had broken out in the gym between Kendrick and the Bell brothers, and that a blow to the neck had killed the 17-year-old. According to this theory, the gym mat wasn't a trap Kendrick fell into. It was a hiding place used by his killers to conceal his body in plain sight. The focus of the case suddenly moved from a tragic accident to an alleged conspiracy involving the highest levels of law enforcement. The Bell family maintained their innocence from the start, providing alibis that seemed to place the brothers far away from Gym Court B at the time of Kendrick's disappearance. School records indicated that one brother was at a wrestling tournament in another city, while the other was in a different wing of the school attending class. The local sheriff's department and eventually the FBI reviewed these timelines and declared them airtight. They stated there was no physical evidence, no DNA, no fingerprints, and no witness testimony that placed the Bell brothers in that gym with Kendrick. However, the Johnson family viewed these alibis with deep skepticism. They argued that in a small town like Valdosta, the influence of a federal agent could easily manipulate school records and silence witnesses. They pointed to the fact that the FBI agent father had reportedly contacted local law enforcement early in the investigation, a move the family interpreted as an attempt to steer the narrative away from his sons. These tensions eventually led to a massive civil lawsuit and a federal civil rights investigation that lasted for years, turning the town into a battlefield of protests and legal filings. The Department of Justice eventually closed their investigation in 2016, citing a lack of evidence to prove that anyone had willfully violated Kendrick's civil rights. Yet the shadow remained. For those who doubted the official story, the Bell brothers became the face of a system they believed was designed to protect its own at any cost. The Bell family in turn sued for defamation, claiming their lives had been destroyed by baseless accusations. This conflict ensured that the Kendrick Johnson case would never just be about a gym mat. It would become a symbol of the deep-seated distrust between a grieving community and the authorities sworn to protect them. In a modern high school, equipped with 35 security cameras, the disappearance of a student in broad daylight should have been captured from multiple angles. When investigators began reviewing the footage from Lowndes High School, everyone expected to see the definitive moment Kendrick Johnson walked into Gym Court B. But instead of clarity, the digital record provided only more questions and a series of frustrating, unexplained gaps. The footage released to the public and the family was a chaotic patchwork of timestamps. Investigators found that the cameras covering the gym entrances and the interior of the court were not synchronized. Some clocks were off by minutes, others by hours, making it nearly impossible to create a seamless timeline of the afternoon Kendrick vanished. But the most disturbing discovery wasn't the lack of synchronization. It was the missing frames. In the crucial window of time when Kendrick would have entered the gym and approached the mats, the footage is jarringly inconsistent. On certain cameras, the video appears to skip or jump, missing several minutes of activity. One specific camera, which should have had a clear view of the area where the mats were stored, was described as being blurry or out of focus during the most critical moments. To the authorities, this was simply the result of an aging, motion-activated system that was prone to technical glitches and poor maintenance. The Johnson family's legal team hired their own forensic video analysts to examine the hard drives. Their findings were explosive. The analysts claimed that the footage showed signs of manual tampering, specifically that certain sections had been deleted or overwritten. They pointed to a 15-minute gap in a hallway camera that should have shown who else entered or exited the gym around the time Kendrick did. If the system was motion-activated, they argued, the presence of a 6-foot-tall athlete should have certainly triggered a recording. Furthermore, some of the footage that was provided appeared to have been recorded at a lower resolution than the rest of the school's data, making it impossible to identify faces in the background. The school stood by their equipment, stating that the system was working as intended and that no one had access to the server room to alter the files. Yet, for a community already suspicious of a cover-up, the technical difficulties felt too convenient. This lack of visual evidence meant that the only witnesses to what happened in Gym Court B were the heavy vinyl mats themselves. Without a clear video of Kendrick climbing the mats alone, the accident theory remained a hypothesis based on circumstantial evidence. The missing minutes of footage became the center of a firestorm, leaving a void where the truth should have been and fueling the belief that someone, somewhere, had the power to make the evidence simply disappear. The case of Kendrick Johnson didn't end with the closing of the FBI's investigation or the sealing of the school's surveillance logs. Instead, it transformed into a decade-long crusade for justice that has seen the case reopened not once, but twice. For Kendrick's parents, Jacqueline and Kenneth Johnson, the fight has been a grueling marathon of legal battles, exhumations, and public protests. They have spent years carrying their son's photo through the streets of Valdosta, refusing to let the world forget the boy in the gym mat. In 2021, the case saw a sudden spark of hope when the Lowndes County Sheriff's Office reopened the file, claiming that new information might finally provide the missing link. Investigators spent months re-examining thousands of pages of evidence and interviewing witnesses who had remained silent for years. But when the final report was released in early 2022, the conclusion remained unchanged. The sheriff stated that there was no evidence of foul play and that Kendrick's death was, and always had been, a tragic accident. The file was closed again, but the wounds in the community remained wide open. The legacy of Kendrick Johnson is now one of the most polarizing chapters in Georgia's history. To some, it is a textbook example of how grief can lead to a search for conspiracies where none exist. They point to the dozens of investigators from multiple agencies who all reached the same conclusion. To others, it remains a haunting reminder of how a system can fail a young man of color, protecting its own interests and burying the truth in a labyrinth of missing organs, deleted footage, and bureaucratic silence. Today, Gym Court B at Lowndes High School still stands, but the heavy wrestling mats are no longer stored in the same way. The school has moved on, and new classes of students walk the halls, many of whom were just children when the sirens first arrived on that January morning. But the silence in that gym remains heavy. It is the silence of a mystery that has never truly been solved in the hearts of the people who loved Kendrick. As we close the file on this investigation, we are left with the same haunting question that has echoed since 2013. How does a 17-year-old athlete vanish in a room full of people and end up in a position he couldn't have reached alone? Whether it was a freak accident or a calculated crime, Kendrick Johnson's story serves as a chilling warning that sometimes the most public places can hide the darkest secrets. I hope you found this deep dive into the Kendrick Johnson case as compelling as it is unsettling. If you want to help us continue uncovering the details behind cases like this and stay updated on future investigations, consider subscribing to the channel. We return every Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with another case that deserves attention. And if you're not ready to close the file just yet, click on one of the videos on your screen now. There are still unanswered questions, unresolved stories, and voices that refuse to fade into silence. Because in true crime, the investigation never really ends. Until next time, stay aware, stay curious, and keep your line open. Good night.